Hi, and welcome to another episode of All Things Considered. Tonight I had a video that I wanted to do, and I got kind of sidetracked because something came up. Something I want to speak to you about. It deals with Florida, but it could also deal with a lot of other states if we took the time to look into it. And what I mean is that Florida's Fourth Amendment, a judge was wondering out loud during voting rights hearing. He was wondering if it was constitutional. Not the United States Fourth Amendment, but Florida's constitutional Fourth Amendment that was passed. And it says here, U.S. District Judge Robert Hinkle said he wants both sides to address an issue that hasn't been dealt with in court filings, whether the amendment itself is unconstitutional, and if it is, what would it mean? I have been thinking about that for quite a while, and I basically wanted to give you a heads up on what the Fourth Amendment was. Now, it says here, Florida's Fourth Amendment to their Constitution deals with voting rights, restoration for felon initiative. It is an amendment to the Constitution of Florida passed by ballot initiative on November 6, 2018 as part of the 2018 Florida elections. The proposition restored the voting rights of Floridians with felony convictions after they complete all terms of their sentence, including partial or parole or probation. The amendment does not apply to Floridians convicted of murder or sexual offenses. The campaign was sponsored by the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and had support from the American Civil Liberties Union, Christian Coalition of America, and Freedom Partners. Among politicians who took a side on the amendment, several Democrats supported the measure, while some Republicans opposed it. Amendment 4 passed with 64.55% of the votes in favor of. On January 8, 2019, an estimated 1.4 million ex-felons became eligible to vote. Now a little background on this. It says after the abolition of slavery in the United States, Florida enacted black codes which restricted freedoms for African Americans and led to mass incarcerations. The 1868 Florida Constitution enacted felony disenfranchisement, a ban on voting for felons even after the completing parole and probation, disproportionately impacting African Americans. Though Jim Crow and other laws such as educational requirements were repealed in successive constitutions, felon disenfranchisement continued. Now, my thoughts on that is that if you didn't want black folks to have rights, then you shouldn't have took your lazy ass over to Africa and brought them here. It's not fair for you to want them when it suits you and not want them when it doesn't. Black folks live in America now. They've lived here for a long time. They basically have helped sculpt America into what it is. I think slavery was horrible. If I could go back in time, I would love to stop it. But the history past is in the past, the present is in the present, and the future will be here coming as far as tomorrow. Now, having said that, I believe that You should not stop anybody that is a legal citizen from having the same benefits as everybody else. White folks should not have benefits that black folks don't have. Yes, now there is some benefits that you have from certain things when you pay for stuff, such as medical insurance, or if you want to have extra things on your dinner plate. You pay extra for that, therefore you get extra. That's a given. As far as people go, everybody should be able to get the exact same rights as everybody else. Now, felons, on the other hand, people that have committed murder, people who have done things that are so heinous that they need to be locked up forever, by doing said thing, you have agreed to allow your right to vote taken from you. Everybody else, you should pay your debt to society and you should be able to vote. No problem there. You have to forgive me, I kind of go on a rant here. I'm trying to get back on track. It says here that the text of the Fourth Amendment, as it reads, it appears on the Florida ballot November 6, 2018. The text of the amendment reads, Number 4, Constitutional Amendment, Article 6, Section 4, Voting Restoration Amendment. The amendment restores the voting rights of Floridians with felony convictions after they complete all items in terms of their sentence, including parole or probation. The amendment would not apply to those convicted of murder or sexual offenses who would continue to be permanently barred from voting unless the governor and the cabinet vote to restore their voting rights on a case-by-case basis. The full text of the Constitutional Amendment was available to voters in a booklet provided by the Florida Division of Elections. A 60% vote in favor was required for approval. The yes got 5,148 votes. 5,148. No, I'm reading that wrong again. 5,148,926. The noes were 2,828,339. The yes got 64.55%. The noes got 35.45%. Total votes 100%. Registered voters and turnouts 13,200,872, or 60.43%. Now, back to what the judge had said. A federal judge added a twist on Thursday in the legal battle over whether convicted felons who served their time behind bars should be required to pay court-ordered financial obligations before voting rights are restored. Now they tack on that court-ordered financial obligations because they know a lot of the people, especially in the Deep South, a lot of people that are convicted felons that serve their time and do their debt, they get out, they're not going to be able to pay that fine. So until you can pay the fine, you can't vote. That's a good reason. That's a good way, if you are so inclined, that's a good way to keep people from voting that you don't want to vote. Plaintiffs in the case are challenging a state law that carries out a constitutional amendment granting voting rights to felons who have completed all terms of their sentence, including parole and probation. The amendment approved by voters in November excluded people convicted of murder or a felony sexual offense. Under a measure approved by the Republican-dominated legislature this spring and signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis, felons would have to pay full financial obligations ordered by courts as part of sentencing, including fees, fines, restitutions, to be eligible to have their voting rights restored. Voting and civil rights groups who filed a lawsuit alleged that hinging the rights to vote on financial amounts hinging the right to vote on finances amounts to an unconstitutional poll tax and is a vestige of Jim Crow era policies aimed at preventing black folks from participating in elections. I see it that way because I believe that's the way it is. During a telephone hearing Thursday, U.S. District Judge Robert Hinkle said he wants both sides to address an issue that hasn't been dealt with in court filings, whether the amendment itself is unconstitutional and what it would mean if it is. The law passed this spring by the legislature makes clear that a plaintiff cannot vote until the plaintiff has satisfied all financial obligations, Hinkle said during the hour-long hearings. If it should turn out that the Florida Constitutional Provision Amendment 4 if it should turn out that the Florida Constitutional Provision Amendment 4 also provides that a plaintiff cannot vote unless the plaintiff satisfies all the financial obligations, then the question becomes, what happens if that's unconstitutional? I say that all the time. With everything. The states, they pass laws all the time and they make amendments all the time, but is it constitutional? And the reason I'm doing this and dealing with Florida is because Florida happens to be what's important right at the moment. But I live in Minnesota and I deal with federal police. I don't have city police and I don't really deal with a sheriff. I deal with the Veterans Administration Police, which is Homeland Security, which patrols the area that I live in. I live in an unregulated territory, and that's the police we have. Now, they wrote me a ticket for driving without a license. I was not driving. I was in my automobile. I was traveling. I was the only one in my automobile, which is private property, by the way. They say that when they wrote me the ticket that the states have said that it is illegal to drive without a license and that you have to have a license to drive, which I totally agree with. If you're going to drive, then you need to get a license. Federal law dictates that. But if I'm going to be traveling, which I am not a driver, I am a traveler, I am in my automobile, which was not created to be a motorized vehicle. It was created to be a private automobile. I do not need a license to drive. I do not need a license to travel in my automobile because I am not driving. I got to be careful there because they want to take and use the slang term drive or driver. But they say that the states have created a law that says you have to have a driver's license to operate a motorized vehicle. And that is true, but they have lumped every single person that owns an automobile into the category of driver. And they have lumped every automobile that has four wheels and travels with a motor as a motorized vehicle, and that's not the way it is. The judges were not willing to go against what another judge had said. They stuck with what the judge had said, and they were unwilling to go against the state. And backing up my Ninth Amendment rights under the Constitution of the United States. My Ninth Amendment right says that even though my right is not written down, it is not any less of a right. Well, the states have figured out how to take that right and turn it into a privilege. And they make lots and lots of money off of that every day. And the judge is unwilling to go against the court or go against the state and say that the state is wrong because they know that the state would lose millions and millions and millions upon millions of dollars every year from not being able to get driver's license fees, not be able to get tabs and license fees, license plate fees and all of that. So, getting back to my point, in Florida, they have to decide if the amendment that they passed is constitutional or not. Because if you're in a state and the state passes a law or makes an amendment, that amendment cannot go against the federal court. That amendment cannot go against the federal Constitution of the United States. That law has to be backed up by the Constitution of the United States, which is the Supreme Court and the supreme law of the land, the federal Constitution of the United States. That's my take on it. Anyway, if you have a problem in your state, you think that they have done something that is causing you grief and it's unconstitutional and they're unwilling to do anything about it, please put a comment below. I would love to hear about it, and I'd love to converse with you on it. I'm sure other people would love to hear it too. If you have an idea for a video that you would like me to do, please put a comment. Let me know what the idea is. Give me a little bit of background on it, and I will see what I can do. If you like my videos, please put a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe to my videos, please subscribe. If you want me to get off the air, put that in the comment and let me know. If you think I can do something that's better or make my videos more enjoyable to listen to, please put a comment. I was doing videos where you could see me and hear me talk, but now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it and you can hear me, sort of like a podcast almost. There's no real need to see me per se. If you miss me, put a comment. I'll change my format. Anyway, I'm going to let you go on that note. This has been All Things Considered. Have a good night, America, and all points beyond.